Don't know what really made me want to be an advocate for rape victims. It was something that just evolved. I saw an article in a newspaper looking for advocates to assist rape victims in the emergency room. So I thought that was pretty interesting. By the time I got to the end of the training, I was sure that this is what I wanted to do. Often I am one of the first people there. I introduce myself to the survivor just to reassure them that I'm there for them. I'm not a technical person, I'm not a nurse, I'm not a physician, I'm not there to get anything from them, just to give to them whatever moral and emotional support I can offer while they're going through the entire process at the emergency room.
A sexual assault forensic examiner or SAFE examiner is a nurse or physician or PA who is responsible for the forensic collection of evidence at the time that a survivor of a sexual assault comes to an emergency department. It is one of the most intense emotional experiences you can have in emergency medicine. Every gesture that you do, every phrase that you say, the nuances are being picked up and magnified by the survivor. And you sense that. You sense that they are struggling with their memories of what happened. They're struggling with their feelings of how responsible they were about what may or may not have happened. This is not your fault, what happened. You realize how much of an impact those little words can sometimes have in the overall process. It is actually a goal of mine to reintroduce the concepts, the principles of the SAFE exam to physicians who work in emergency departments so that they can be the safety net when a SAFE examiner is not present.
I've been in special victims going on 16 years. The most important element in an investigation is really the victim. Going to the hospital and seeing somebody beat up so bad that you just shake your head and say, oh my God. It doesn't matter to me what you are as a victim. You know, I'm not necessarily going to be the person that's going to coddle them and say, poor you, because I have my job to do. And my job is to get evidence and lock the person up that did it, you know, but compassionate to the point where you get all the information out of them. The guys I work with say to me all the time, oh my God, how are you still doing this? How are you still doing this? I don't know, I just do.
The first rape case I did was back in February of 1986. It involved a young woman who was about my age at the time. I was in my middle to late 20s then, and she'd gone to the University of Pennsylvania, and I remember that because I had gone to Dartmouth. So it struck me that we could have been friends. And she had been living on the Upper West Side, which is where I was living at the time, and a guy took the skylight off her bathroom on the roof and dropped in and came in her bedroom and raped her. And 2 days later, she picked his photo out of mugshots, and 2 years later, the police finally were able to find him. And so the first time I met her was right after she saw the lineup. She testified, she did a great job, and after she testified, we took a break, and I walked her to the elevator, and she said to me, I don't even care what happens. I feel so good that I got to say what happened to me. I got to point my finger at that guy and say in so many words, you bastard, you raped me. And I feel so much better. So whether we win or lose, you don't have to call me. We did win, and so I called her, and of course she was ecstatic that we had won. And after that case, I was hooked. This is why I wanted to be a DA. I wanted to help people. I wanted to have that kind of relationship with the victims. I wanted to have that kind of impact with the victims. And so I realized this was my niche. This is where I wanted to be. And I've been in the sex crimes unit ever since. That's now 23 years ago.
There have been a couple of times where clients, survivors have come to me really feeling desperate, really feeling like they were coming to say goodbye, that they had been through such horrific ordeals that they no longer wanted to live and were fearful that they were going to hurt themselves. And there have been a couple of times where I had to make the really difficult decision with someone to go to the emergency room to be evaluated. And a couple of times people have had to remain at the hospital, and that's been really tough. Very tough in the moment. I think both times that this has been my experience, we were able to work through it as a dyad, together. But in that initial, let's take a walk over to the emergency room, I'm worried for you, the sometimes hatred that people feel towards you in that moment is difficult to go home with. There are a lot of experiences with survivors that stay with me for different reasons. There are, of course, more difficult ones that stay with me because they felt shocking or they felt difficult to bear myself. But then there are other stories of people that I've worked with that stick with me for really positive reasons, and when I reflect back on it, it really makes me feel good.
I'm often asked why I would want to assist people in that type of trauma. It was just my need to want to help someone.
My dad wanted to be a police officer, but he couldn't because back then they had a height requirement and he wasn't tall enough. So unfortunately my dad passed away when I was 18 years old, and he never saw me be a police officer, but he would have laughed because I'm only 5'5" and he was way bigger than me.
Anybody I grew up with is kind of surprised where I ended up. I mean, I was unbelievably straight and a little prudish, and I have to tell you honestly, I never uttered the P word, as I called it, until I put that case I told you about in the grand jury. I had never said the word out loud. I grew up in a house with all sisters, and I just had no reason to speak like that. And so my friends were pretty surprised this is what I ended up doing, but I'm just hooked on the helping people aspect of this.
The pluses or the pros, I think, heavily outweigh feeling scared or feeling depressed about what it is that, we do in this field.
That's the beauty also of working as a safe examiner, is you then have colleagues that are just such excellent people, and any number of them could have won this award, clearly, hands down. It is a profession that attracts truly exceptional personalities, characters. I think as the year goes on and people know more about it and more applications, it'll become a harder and harder process to choose winners, because they'll all be exemplary, I'm sure.